Relentless, Overcomer, and Tenacious.
You are listening to The Brave Files, real stories from people living courageously. You can listen to the show anywhere you enjoy podcasts, and we'd love for you to subscribe, rate, and give a review on Apple Podcasts. It really does make a difference, and we appreciate it. Now here's your host, Heather Vickery.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to The Brave Files. It's Heather Vickery. Today's guest has been through more than her fair share of trouble, and she's had lots of opportunity to step into bravery. She's experienced multiple life-threatening injuries that have left her disabled and bedridden for over 12 years, but that didn't keep Elizabeth down. She's a published author. She's a pretty cool lady, and she's here to share her story with us. Elizabeth, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
I'm really excited to have you as well. So I want to talk about your 3 words, but not the 3 words you shared, because we'll do that at the end of the show. But when I asked you if you had your 3 words prepared, you said, I do, but they're Cajun. And what does that mean? So tell us what words you wanted to use, and then tell us what that meant.
What I wanted to use is a phrase called Lash La La Patat. And it is a Cajun phrase because I am from Louisiana. I'm not Cajun, but I am from Louisiana. And it's a phrase that literally, when interpreted in French, it means hold on to the potato. But the Cajun people use it to mean when adversity comes, you dig deep down inside of yourself and you rely on that strong Cajun influence and Cajun strength to pull you through whatever you're going through. So that is the way that the Cajun people use it.
I love that. Say it again for me.
Lash la la patat.
Lash la la patat.
Yes.
That's beautiful. All right, dig in. I know. My daughter's taking French in school, and she's going to be like, why are you talking about potatoes on your podcast?
Exactly.
That's awesome. Elizabeth, I'm really excited to have you here. You have such an interesting story. Girl, everything has been thrown at you. Everything.
Yeah, you're right. It has. It's been a roller coaster ride.
Why don't you give us a little background? Because our listeners don't have the pleasure of knowing the background like I do.
Okay, well, my story started out in the deep South, of course, Louisiana, on a small family farm. My mom was 19 and an unwed mother in 1965. So back in that day, it wasn't looked at like it is now, and it caused a really big turmoil. And for the first 5 years of my life, I was raised by my grandparents as their child. I didn't know any different. And my grandfather died suddenly when I was just over 5. And my grandparents were in their 50s. And I was with my grandmother, and my mother eloped with a man that she met at work.
Oh, wow.
And my biological mother. And then she came back 6 months later and took me. And I had no idea that she was my mother. She told me she was my mother and that my stepdad was my dad. And she took me across the state and put me in daycare and went to work.
Oh, okay. And so hold on for one second. I just have to ask some questions.
Okay.
Did you think she was your sister, or had she been completely out of the picture?
I thought she was my sister, my older sister, because my grandmother, I have 4, my mother has a sister and 2 brothers, and my grandmother's youngest child was 9 years older than me.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So, he was like my big brother. So I never knew any different until that happened. And then it was really, to say the least, very traumatizing.
I can only imagine. I mean, I have a 5-year-old, and she's smart and aware and all of these things. My heart, so many things led to it. And we don't get to stand in a place of judgment for your mom or your grandmother or your grandfather, because, we all, in this crazy mixed up journey, we all try to do what we think is the best thing. I don't think anybody, or at least not most people's intentions are bad, but goodness gracious, that's a difficult position to put a 5-year-old in.
It is. And it was very confusing. And my memories are just sitting in the lunchroom at the daycare crying and asking for my mom. and they would keep coming out, the ladies that worked in the kitchen and the teachers, and would come out and they would comfort me and they'd say, your mom will be back in a little while. And I'd say, no, I want my mom,
Yeah.
meaning my grandmother, because
Yeah.
that's who I thought my grandmother was. So it was really difficult.
And how did
And
she take that? Your grandmother, how did she handle all of this? And was she still in touch with you?
she and my mother did not speak for months, and I think when I don't remember a lot. I have just
Yeah, that's
bits and pieces at 5 years old, but I know that at the end of that school year, I got chicken pox really, really bad, and my mother contacted my grandmother and sent me back to my grandmother's for my grandmother to take care of me
oh
with the
wow.
chicken pox. And that's pretty much the way it was my entire life growing up. Anytime I was sick, anytime I was out of school, I went back to my grandmother's to the family farm, which was great because that's where I wanted to be in the first
Yeah.
place.
That's where you felt safe and comfortable.
Exactly. That was home. That is still home, even though my grandmother's been gone for almost
Mm.
30 years. That's still home, and it'll
Yeah.
always be home in my heart.
So what kind of relationship then developed with your birth mother, with your actual mother?
Not a good one. We
Yeah.
never had a good relationship. I was always the one that was blamed for ruining her life. And I was always inconvenient when I was sick or whatever, and shipped off, like I said, to my grandmother's. And then she and my stepdad had my half sister when I was 9 and my half brother when I was 13. And I became the live in babysitter,
Yeah.
cook, chief bottle washer, and house cleaner. And that was my life from the time I was about 12 until I broke away at 18 and married my husband.
Oh, that is it begs the question, why couldn't she have just left you alone with your grandmother?
Exactly.
Have
Exactly.
you
But
asked her
my
that?
my grandmother was a widow, and she still had 2 children of her own in school, and she only had an 8th grade education.
Wow.
So it would have been difficult. My grandmother would have done it. She would have figured it out. She figured everything out. She supported herself and took care of her boys and put them through school and everything. But I don't know. I don't know. There was a big my grandmother and my mother did not get along, and my
Hmm.
grandfather was the buffer between them. So when he was gone, I guess there was no longer a buffer.
That is so hard. That is a rocky start, friend.
It is. It's a rocky start, and you would think that after going through that, it would have gotten easier. But I'm telling you what, it has not.
It has not. So at 18, you broke away and you met your husband, who's still your husband.
Yes,
Okay.
33 years,
Wow.
and
Congratulations.
thank you. We that was my first fact of being brave. That was the first time I was brave. Was my mother was completely against us dating or having anything. She didn't like him. Of course, she knew that I was in love with him and that he was gonna take away her babysitter and
Yeah.
everything.
So it
So
wasn't about him. There wasn't anything particularly wrong with him. She just
I wouldn't still be
didn't want to
married to
lose
him
you.
33 years later
That's
if there
right.
were.
That's right. But I mean, for her, there wasn't any particular thing about him that she
No.
was opposed to. Just in general, wanted to keep
Yes.
you in your place.
Just keep me under her thumb and in control. And I don't do control very well.
Me either.
So I don't like being
Solidarity.
controlled. And so
Okay. So yeah.
we dated, my husband and I dated for a month, and she decided that he couldn't come back to our house. He couldn't even pull in the driveway to pick me up. I had to walk out to the road to meet him for us to go out because she knew not to tell me I couldn't see him,
Hmm.
because
She couldn't
then
control that.
my stubborn Cajun would come out, and I was over 18. So I would have just, ran off and married him, which I did marry him 4 months after we met. But my husband wanted to elope, and I refused to elope because I said, she's going to sit in a pew and watch me marry you.
I kind of love that. I like that feisty spirit.
That's why my words are my words. They are
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
But, I was not going to sneak off like I was doing something wrong. I was 18 and I was able to make my own decisions.
Good for
And
you.
we got married, and Well, like I said, this past December was 33 years. We've had 3 children. He has a military career. He's a lieutenant colonel, and we've gone in the military together. We've done everything together. So that was my first act of bravery, was defying her and marrying my husband, which turned out to be a really good thing.
Yeah, I think when you tell the rest of your story, we're all going to be really glad you had that support system
Oh, yes.
with you.
I don't know how I would have survived. I just do not know without the husband that I have. But the rest of my story, once we got married, I stayed in relationship with my family as best as I could. You know, I say relationship, it was, you know, a lopsided relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And my husband and I agreed when we got married that he would handle his family and I would handle my family. So that's kind of how we handled it. We worked it out. And when we moved away, I began to get really ill and I got really, really sick with asthma. It started with asthma and went on into chronic fatigue syndrome. And I just was having a really hard time emotionally and just really angry, a lot of anger and rage issues. And I liken it to, I heard a speaker one time say, it's like when you're having a beach ball that you've held under the water for your whole life. And once you get, for some reason, us ladies in our 30s, it starts hitting us and we can't hold that ball down anymore. And it pops up and we push it back and it gets to a point where we just can't keep that all under and it starts coming out. For me, it came out physically in the beginning as asthma and chronic fatigue syndrome. And then it began to come out emotionally like a volcano spewing hot lava.
Wow.
And I was very angry. And it's because in my mother and stepdad's home, I had suffered emotional abuse, mental abuse, physical abuse from my stepdad. And my stepdad had 4 children from his first marriage and sexual abuse from 2 of his sons when I was 9. So I had to deal with that and work through that. And I got myself into counseling. I was already in the process of, I had my degree in holistic nutrition and I was working on my degree in naturopathic medicine. So I decided that I was going to figure out a way to heal myself physically, mentally, spiritually, and emotionally. And I was going to do it naturally without drugs.
Wow.
And that's what I did. And I got myself into counseling. And my counselor was, I interviewed counselors, and I tell people this all the time. You don't have to go to the first one on the list.
That's right.
I called every one of them and I interviewed them on the phone and decided whether I was going to hire them, because you're the customer. Your insurance is paying or you're paying for that counseling.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So you are hiring doctors and counselors and whatever else. So you have the right to say, I don't want you on my team. So I got a really wonderful Christian counselor who really helped me work through all of that, and who also believed in natural healing and natural medicine. And so it took several years of counseling, 7 to be exact, to get through that. And it also took me having to confront my family with the things that had happened.
That had to be, that's a serious act of bravery right there. That had to be terrifying.
It was terrifying, but I had to do it.
Yeah.
Because I could not continue to let them tear me down and break my spirit and say all manner of untruths and horrible things to me and get well. You just can't, the two things can't exist together. It just can't.
I totally agree. How did they react? What happened?
They haven't spoken to me in 15 years.
Because you spoke your truth?
Because I spoke my truth.
How does that make you feel?
I'm fine.
Good for you. I kind of had that. I assumed that, but I try not to make assumptions. So I wanted to ask you.
I'm free. It was hard. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, because it was the only family I had ever had. And when you're in a family, even a dysfunctional family, you don't know what anything else is like.
True story.
And so to walk away was really hard, but it was the most freeing and best thing I could have ever given and done for myself.
Good for you. Can you explain to my listeners what type of medicine work you're doing. It's natural healing. Can you explain what that is?
I do. I work with people healing mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. And a lot of my clients, well, it depends. Some of my clients are chronic illness patients. And generally, with chronic illness patients, I start out coaching with, we walk through their story, we tell their story. And we do that either they can, if they feel comfortable telling me their story, or we can journal or whatever way, but we try to look for traumas within that story that could be triggering what they're dealing with now.
Physical health, yeah.
Physical health, mental health, emotional health. Those all have roots. And a lot of people tell me, oh, well, I had a great childhood and I had wonderful parents. And there's sometimes, though, that you don't realize that there's a trauma. And it can be as simple as, for me, I would not sing for years and years because a friend of mine in high school, we were in the car and I was singing with the radio and I said, oh, I would like to be a singer. And she said, you should get a new dream.
Oh.
And that's a little trauma.
Yeah.
But you don't realize she did, we were teenagers. She said it flippantly, not thinking about it, but it
shut you down
inside of me that I wasn't good enough. And it connected back to all that childhood stuff that I wasn't good enough.
Words matter so much, don't they?
They really do. And we need to really be careful when we're talking to people, even in jest or anything, because you don't know what someone else is going through or what they've been through. And it's very easy to say something not meaning to hurt someone, but you don't know what that's going to connect within them.
Yeah.
That's going to trigger something. And so we start with working through their story, and we start by cleaning up their diet. We get rid of junk food, and people freak out. No, we don't go throw everything away.
I love my junk food, but I'm trying to do that myself, and it's tough.
It is, but it's a process. And I tell people, I'm like, if you eat 7 cookies a day, let's eat 6 cookies a day.
That's right. I love that.
Do that for a week or two, and then let's eat 5 cookies a day. Instead of throwing ourselves into more stress, let's work through the process. And that's what I had to do. I had to work through a process of slowly changing what I was doing. I usually start out with supplements that are cleansing, so that we get rid of a lot of the toxic overload, the toxic stress in our body. That all builds up and stores in our organs and in our fat cells. So we try to cleanse those. We try to start exercising. And I tell people, if you're not exercising now, let's just stand for 5 minutes. Just stand in place for 5 minutes.
Well, that's you. When you were talking about the food and working backwards, I've been doing that with fitness. I'm 43. I used to work out before I had my 3rd child, and I haven't done anything since then except for a little yoga. I do love yoga.
Yes.
But I hate it. I really hate exercising. And so I started doing 2 minutes a day. And my partner said, well, can you add 15 seconds a day? Are you willing to add 15 seconds a day? I was like, well, duh, I can add 15 seconds. And so now I'm at 7.5 minutes.
Right.
So I just do that. And I add a little bit more every day.
And especially my chronic pain patients, because they're so sedentary, and exercising brings on more fatigue and more pain. So we have to go really slowly. So I did the same thing. I started out on my recumbent bike doing 2 minutes at the lowest setting and the lowest speed, just 2 minutes. And I did 2 minutes for probably 2 weeks. And then I bumped it up to 3 minutes. And I just kept building. And that's how I do everything. I don't want, because you put someone into shock if you take away everything, or if you add a bunch of stuff. I would never go to a trainer because they are too intense. And that would just cause me more stress.
I get that.
Worse.
And I apply that system, that method, to business all the time. Like, right, break it down into small bite-sized pieces. It's overwhelming to take it all on at once.
It is.
Anything.
That's why New Year's resolutions don't work.
You're right.
Go, I'm going to do all of this studying. And by January 15th, it's, they're not doing any of it anymore.
Yeah.
Whereas if they'd have just started riding the exercise bike for 2 or 3 minutes. Then by February 1st, they'd be up to 5 minutes.
Yeah.
You start small and you think about it as a child, liken it to a child. You wouldn't take your brand new infant out that's, 3 days old all over the place and expose them to a bunch of germs. It's the same
Right.
way.
Right.
They don't go from being an infant in bed to running. They start by scooting and then rolling over and then crawling. And then when they pull up and they pull up and they pull up until they get really good at it before they take their first step. That's how we need to start looking at things.
So, Elizabeth, tell me, let's just backtrack just a second, because I did say in the intro, and I'm sure people are curious, what happened that left you bedridden for 12 years? Because I think we're talking about how you maybe got out of that, but we haven't talked about how you got into it.
No, actually, that happened after I went
Seriously?
through what I call my nervous breakdown
Okay.
and separating from my family. About, I was doing a lot better for about a year. And my children and we were living in Michigan at the time. My husband's in the military, so we have lived a little of everywhere. And my children and I had gone back to Louisiana for a visit with our friends and my husband's family. And we came back and we met my husband and my oldest daughter in Kentucky to camp. And we were doing a little family reunion with his family. And we were on our way back to Michigan in construction. And we had a semi truck that was in front of us that was in the wrong lane. And he stopped. He was empty. He had dropped off a load in Ohio and was headed back to Canada and didn't speak any English. So he wasn't able to read the signs saying that he could get over. He got to a bridge that was ornate and he didn't think he could clear the bridge because we were on the shoulder because the traffic had shifted for the construction. And he threw the brakes on and we were pulling our camper fully loaded and we couldn't stop. My husband couldn't stop in time.
Oh,
So
my
when we hit
goodness.
the semi, the camper hit us. Then our 16 and 18-year-old daughters were driving the other car because we met my husband. So we had both of our vehicles. So they were driving my husband's truck and they hit the camper and the camper hit us again.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. So, you talk about, boy, you get up and you get knocked down and you get up and you get knocked down. But the thing is that you keep getting up.
Yeah.
You don't stop. And so thank God, my entire family walked away with just cuts and scrapes and bruises.
That's
I tell
amazing.
people I hobbled away. My husband, my son, who was 11, and myself were in the Suburban pulling the camper, and we were trapped. My husband had to kick a window out and pull us out of the window of the car to get us out. And I ended up with a ruptured disc in my back that damaged the sciatic nerves, and herniated disc in my neck that pinch off the nerves to my hands, so my hands go numb. And I get a lot of, I had a severe whiplash. I was turned around answering my son's question. I had my seatbelt on, but I had leaned my seat back and I was reading a book. My son had asked a question and I was rotated. My spine was rotated.
Oh my gosh.
Because I was talking to him when we made impact. And then impact number 2 and then impact number 3 hit both of my knees, even though the airbags deployed for the first impact. For the second and third impact, they were already deflated. So I damaged both my knees in the wreck and I broke my sternum.
Holy cow. Are you the only one that sustained such serious injuries?
Yes.
Which is miraculous.
Yes. And as a mom, that's how you want it.
That is. You're right.
You don't want your teenagers or your 11-year-old to have to suffer through anything like that. And my husband, I would have been horrible if he'd had to give up his military career, if they would have had to medically retire him because he had these injuries. So I would rather it be me. And
so you embarked on you're probably still embarking on it, but a 12 years, this kept you bedridden for 12 years.
Yes, I tried. I was in so much pain. I was in physical therapy for 18 months. I was in a wheelchair and then on a walker and then on a cane. And I was on a cane until about 3 years ago. And during the winter, really bad, back in the wheelchair sometimes during the winter. it triggered severe fibromyalgia
Oh
and also
my.
severe mixed connective tissue disorder, which is essentially pre-lupus. It's lupus without the blood markers for lupus. So until I finally
Woo.
got diagnosed with that and got on a medication that controls the inflammation, I just was in so much pain. I couldn't get out of it. And I couldn't even think clearly enough to treat myself naturally. And I was at one point on 120 Percocets a month, 30
Wow.
Dilaudid for breakthrough pain, shots in my back, shots in my neck, occipital shots in my occipital nerves for migraines. So I was essentially a zombie most of the time.
How did you come back out? How did you get out of that?
My last surgery was in December of 2014, and after the surgery, they could not control my pain. It was an outpatient surgery, and my husband refused to take me home. He said, "I'm not taking her home if you can't control her pain with an IV here. I'm
What are
just
we
going
going
to
to
get
do
her
at
home
home?
and call 911, and we're going to be back."
Yeah.
So
Smart
he said,
man.
"I'm not taking her home." So they put me on the floor. During the course of that night, I blew 3 IVs. They had to restart. They had me on oral pain medication, shots, and the IV. And I was still going into shock because they could not control my pain. And I just had this moment of clarity. And I looked at my husband through chattering teeth and shaking. And I said, "I'm done. I'm just done. I'm not doing this their way anymore."
Good for you.
And when they sent me home, I let my body recover from that surgery. And then I did what I told you before. I made a plan. And
Mm-hmm.
I sat down and I wrote out a plan, and I said, I'm going to start eating this, and I'm going to start weaning off of this medication. And I started with a half a pill, and I went from 4 pills a day to 3.5, and I did that for a month. And I'd mark every day off on the calendar. When I got to that month, I took another half out, and I weaned myself off of all that medication and went on supplements and cleaned up my diet to get myself to start healing my body.
It
And
is,
it was
you are fierce, lady. I'm telling
I
you.
relentless. That's my word.
Relentless is right.
Relentless. I don't give
Yeah.
up. I tell people I did my DNA, and QUIT was not in it.
I so love that.
It just does not exist in my DNA. And it was also during this time of after this last surgery, when I was starting to get better, that I decided to do my DNA, because I had never been told who my biological father was, and I wanted to
Oh,
know.
wow. Okay.
So I did my DNA, and I did my family trees, and I figured it out. And that was that was also um, freeing for me
Sure.
to
Sure.
heal, just to know a name and to know a family history. And he won't acknowledge me or talk to me or have anything to do with me,
So you
but
tried to connect with him.
I
Yeah.
tried to call him. I called him, tried to connect with him, and he had, all of his, he was blaming it on his cousins and his half brother, but he's an only son, and I have extremely strong DNA with his mother. So it can't
Oh,
be anyone but him. There are no other options.
okay.
And then I got her sophomore picture from high school and my senior picture, and you put them beside each other, we could be twins.
Wow.
I look exactly like his mother. And I always wondered, I never knew who I'd look like. I never looked like anyone in my mother's family. So I always wondered. And so that, just having that knowledge of who he was healing in as well, and
Sure.
gave me another reason to get back up and keep going.
I
And
can see
and I
that.
did just exactly what I tell people to do. I tell people, when you work with me, you get a naturopath with a bonus, because I know where you've been.
Yeah.
I know where you've been. I've been there, and I know you can do it. If I can do it, anybody can do it.
That is so inspiring. It's really, you are amazing. What, at what point in your life, or have you, did you go, damn, I'm brave? Like, I'm doing this.
Um, I guess after I really stood up to my family and told them all the things that happened to me, and they denied it and they fought it, and letters and emails and ugly messages on the phone were left and everything.
Hmm.
And I finally said, I'm just done. I'm done. And I walked away, and I had somebody say to me, man, you're really brave.
Yeah.
And I went, no, I'm not. And then I started thinking about it, and I thought, how many people stay in abusive relationships, especially when it's your biological
Yeah.
parent
Your family.
that's abusing you. A lot of people walk away from abusive marriages, but a lot of people stay in abusive families that they were born in
Hmm.
because they don't think they have another choice.
Yeah.
And they do. And
Yeah.
so I guess that's really when I realized, I guess I am brave. I guess I
I'd say
am,
so.
and so I don't know, I keep getting knocked down, and I just keep getting back up because I'm just not going to quit.
Good for you.
I knew in 2002 that I was called to speak, and that I was called to write a book and tell my story. I didn't know the rest of my story at the time.
Right.
It was before all of this happened.
So, can you tell us about the book?
The book is called Beautifully Broken, and it's about my story, essentially what I've shared about my family, my birth, and growing up, and it just goes into a lot more detail and about breaking away from my family and how I healed myself. And I go through. I have a chapter on physical healing, mental healing, emotional healing, and spiritual healing, and what I walk through each of those to help me get to a point of being healed. And then my next book is going to be called Relentless, and it's about the car accident and coming back from that.
I think it's so powerful that you've been able to write about this and share these gifts and these lessons in yet another way. I mean, you're such a teacher and a leader and an educator. I think it's really such a wonderful gift. We'll have links to the book in the show notes, so you guys go check it out and keep us posted on Relentless, which the title is killer, by the way. I love it.
Oh, thank you. Well, I mean, I fought and fought over what the name should be. And then I finally came up with Relentless, because to come back and come back and come back, you've got to be relentless. You
I
have to
hear
be.
you.
You
I hear
cannot,
you.
you just can't not be relentless.
So, despite all of these things that kept just getting in your way and throwing trouble at you, were there moments of joy, things that you took the time to stop and acknowledge and celebrate? How do you celebrate success? Can you share that?
There's absolutely moments of joy, and my husband and my children are my main source of joy. They, I'm telling you, to marry a man you knew for 4 months,
It's
for him,
risky. That's
yeah, that's risky, and for him to go through all of this with you and still stand by your side,
hmm.
that's joyful.
Absolutely. I
And
love
we
it.
have 3 children together, and they are absolutely just phenomenal people. They're 30, 28, and 24 now. 2 are married. One is heading towards engagement. We have a feeling he's pretty smitten with the young lady. So, and now we have 2 granddaughters,
Oh,
and
congratulations.
we are just, I mean, there's always joy. You can always find joy. There's, sorrow comes at night, but joy comes in the morning. And you can always, and my children and my grandchildren are my greatest source of joy. And that's one thing I've never understood. When my mother cut me out of her life, she did the same with my children. And she has no relationship with them either. And I don't understand that. I
She
don't.
has missed out on so much, such a loss
She's
on her
missed
part.
I mean, it's terrible.
Yeah.
It's awful. It makes me sad for my children, but it really makes me really sad for her,
Yeah.
because, I mean, graduations and birthdays and 2 marriages, coming up on a third. And I mean, it's just, it
Yeah.
breaks my heart.
Yeah.
But my husband and my children are my source of joy. And then my faith. I have a very strong faith, and I'm a Christian, and my faith brings me joy and um, gives me strength that I couldn't otherwise have.
Good for you. How do you celebrate those small? I mean, obviously you've had some really big one. You got out of bed, you wrote a book, you've done all these really wonderful large things, but little things that are successes just as important as the big ones. How do you honor those?
I actually, it's just different ways. I mean, it depends on what it is, but, I'll take my husband out to dinner. And, if I'll be like, I'm paying for dinner because I've got my business now. And so that's kind of nice for me and freeing for me.
Yeah.
One of our biggest, greatest sources of joy and celebration is for our 30th anniversary, we bought a motorcycle, and we had wanted one forever, and we bought a motorcycle, and we love to ride. So
Wow.
I call that my mental health day. That would probably come more under what do I do to take care of myself.
Well, it could be both. Yeah. I mean, I think that is so remarkable for someone who spent so many years stuck in bed or in a wheelchair. Like, it's beautiful. It's
It's
really beautiful.
and we love it. And we live in North Carolina now. That's where we're stationed, and my husband will retire in 4 years, and that's where we'll stay, other than traveling around to speak for me. But we love the mountains, and so we will go to the mountains and ride the motorcycle in the mountains, and that is just. And then some days he'll call me from work. He gets off. He goes in really early, so he gets off at 3 in the afternoon, and he'll call me, and I'll say, "Mental health day."
I
And
love
he
that.
knows that means I'm going to be dressed and I want to ride.
I love it. I think that's great. You have such an infectious energy. I have one question about the work that you do. Do you have to be in person or can it be virtual work?
No, virtual, absolutely.
Okay.
Because of where we are, it's just too hard. We live in rural North Carolina. It's really hard for me to travel or for my clients to travel. So I do everything just about over the phone or Zoom.
Okay, good to know because I just think it's really interesting. We'll share a little bit more about the work that Elizabeth does on the show notes if you want to know more and make sure you can reach out to her. As we come to the close of the show, which I'm not eager to do. We've gone a little over. I hope you've all been patient with us, but I am so interested and inspired by your story, Elizabeth, but we do have to come to the close. So, can you share with me what your favorite charitable organization is to support?
Well, there are a couple, but one thing that I do to support, and of course, my husband being military, I support military and military spouses. So, military and military spouses get a big discount when they work with me. And that is just something that I do that I feel like I pay to pay back. I also am part of this Key Spouses organization on base where we take care of our spouses and the families, especially when our members are deployed, because I've been there, know what that's like. And then my church, of course, and then we like to support St. Jude's. My husband had a friend in high school that died of leukemia, and so St. Jude's has always been near and dear to our hearts, and so we support St. Jude's as well.
Okay. So St. Jude's is the charitable organization here that we're favoring and honoring this week. If you guys don't know anything about it, I assume you do. It's a pretty big one, but go learn about them, share information. If you have resources to provide to them, please do so. I deeply, truly believe that sharing our charitable organizations and coming together makes us stronger as people and as a community and as a community of the whole wide world. So
I agree.
thank you. Elizabeth, can you share your 3 words with us one last time?
And let's see, you want me to, the Lashwala Patat?
Well, I love that, but let's do your original 3 words, the show
Okay.
opening.
Relentless, overcomer, and tenacious.
I like to just let those sink in for just a second. Those are great words. We talked about all of them. Relentless is a powerful word, and it's one that I haven't come across since I've been doing this show. So you are definitely relentless and inspiring, and I'm so grateful. I read that you said that you are stronger than any adversity that tries to knock you down, and that really struck a chord with me. So thank you so much for sharing your story and your energy with us. It's a grateful reminder that situations thrust upon us don't have to define us, and they don't have to own us. We're in control.
Exactly. We get to choose.
We get to choose. I love
We
that.
get,
Elizabeth, thank you so much for being here with me.
thank you, Heather. I appreciate it. And I had such a good time.
All right, guys, thanks for being here on the journey. I am grateful to have you as a listener. Be sure to subscribe, rate, and review so you can know when the next episode comes out. We'll see you next Thursday. This is Heather Vickery reminding you, as always, to choose bravely. The Brave Files is proudly supported by Lost Format Apparel, a socially conscious clothing company. You already know that homelessness is a huge problem. Over 500,000 Americans are living without shelter and millions more without consistent access to everyday basics. My friends at Lost Format know that solving homelessness is a much larger problem than any one company or person can solve on their own. It requires teamwork, sacrifice, strength, and building communities through personal and professional relationships. And isn't that exactly what the Brave Files podcast is all about? That's why I'm proud to say that the Brave Files has partnered with Lost Format, and together we're working to change the face of consumerism in addressing homelessness. You can now get one of 2 fantastic shirts custom designed specifically for the Brave Files. Each order goes towards providing necessities to the homeless. We have one shirt that, of course, says choose bravely, and another that reminds you that brave is always greater than fearless. Head on over to vickeryandco.com/store to see both beautiful shirts and to check out the entire product line from Lost Format. All of their stuff is super soft and comfortable and has an amazing fit. Use promo code BRAVE to get 10% off of your Brave Files custom t-shirts. And if you have an order over $30, your shipping is free. I choose bravely to take the plunge to help solve homelessness. Are you with me?
Thank you for listening to The Brave Files. Be sure to visit thebravefilespodcast.com to access the show notes and discover fantastic bonus content. Music composed and produced by Matt Lewis of Union Music, LLC.
Special thanks to our editor and audio mix expert, Andrew Olson. I am eternally grateful for all that he does to make each week sound so fantastic. You can hear more of Andrew's work at findandrewolson.com.